Welcome to this COVID-19 update for Rogers. My name is Teena Avery. I am thrilled and excited to introduce you to my next guest, our Member of Parliament, Mr. Kyle Seeback. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Happy to be here, Teena.
Let's talk. I just understand that the state of emergency has been extended a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I think everyone was probably hoping it wasn't going to be extended, given that we've now been in this state of emergency and social distancing for almost a month now. But I agree with the decision. I think it's necessary. We are seeing some good results coming out of the numbers recently. We haven't seen our hospitals or ICUs overwhelmed, so these are all really good signs. And I think the last thing we want to do is assume everything's great and therefore go jump right back into our normal lives and end up with a rapid expansion of COVID-19. So it's disappointing in a sense because we'd all like to have normal lives, but I think it's the right call.
I agree. I think that many of us, I think, could tell that this is probably what was going to happen, even though on the inside we're thinking we want to get back to normal. But I've said it many times in different updates, and we will get through this. We will get to the other side of it, but we have to follow all of these rules and regulations to make sure that we get there with very little loss, if possible. Businesses being able to come back and thrive. And I think that's kind of the goal and why we should be all following the rules and regulations that are put forth for us.
Yeah, and nothing prevents them from actually shortening that, right? If things go really well over the next, 3 weeks, they might decide to, engage in some gradual loosening of these restrictions. So I think the safe bet is to extend, and you can obviously revisit that.
So how has COVID-19 affected you as a member of parliament?
Well, obviously, I don't go to the House of Commons, and I don't get to participate in the legislation that was being drafted on a whole bunch of different issues. So that's obviously a big change. And like everybody else, I'm at home, which is it's different. I don't get to meet with my staff to go over things. We're now trying to find new ways to communicate with each other. And I think the real challenge or the real difference for us is the really large increase in the volume of emails and telephone calls and social media messages from constituents who have really legitimate issues with respect to accessing the programs that the government has been offering, whether that's for business or whether that's for individuals. So, we are really trying to make sure that we can serve the community well and get them the answers to those questions in a timely manner. And that's always something we do, but now it's pretty much all we do. And even only doing that, we are certainly having a hard time keeping up with all the requests right now.
Where can the people of Dufferin-Caledon get the most accurate and important information that directly affects us?
Well, I think all of your elected officials are working really hard to make sure that they have information up on their websites. I know that my website has very detailed sections on all the benefits that are available for individuals and for corporations. It also talks about if you have family members that are stranded abroad, what the procedure is to do there. And I know the same thing is happening at the provincial and also at the municipal level. And I would also direct people to make sure you go to the Government of Canada websites dealing with COVID-19 and the province of Ontario. These are the places you're going to get real information. As much as we all love and enjoy Facebook, that is not the place to get your information. I have so many people now sending me videos and other information that they saw on Facebook with what I would like to describe as sort of strange conspiracy theories. And those are really not reliable sources of information. Your government websites and your elected representatives, we're working very hard to make sure we're giving only accurate information.
Yeah, I actually was having a look at your website, and I will compliment you. It is phenomenal. There is a great amount of information there. So if you are looking for information, anybody who's watching this, I advise you to go and definitely check it out. The information will be up on the screen as well for you for the website, so people can get that information. I know that the provincial and federal government have provided many plans and put many plans in place to help the financial loss that individuals and families are feeling. Can we talk a little bit about the short-term and long-term support for workers and parents?
For sure. I mean, the biggest benefit that is going on right now is for those who have lost their job as a result of COVID-19, and that's the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB. So last week was the first week that people could apply for those. And there were, I think, some bumps in the road for people applying, but the application process has been going fairly smoothly. You can do it through your MyCRA account, and that's been a great way for people to do it. It's $2,000 a month for up to 4 months. And many people are accessing that as the primary source of income replacement. There are a few things that have gone on as well. They've increased the Canada Child Benefit. It's going to be an extra about $550 for the average Canadian family. There's also some goods and services tax credit payment that people are going to get. That's going to come to you as a GST refund earlier than normal. And you can also, there's a deferral of filing your taxes, which of course is helpful for most people. For businesses, the government has heard that the initial 10% wage subsidy was not sufficient. So now they're announcing the 75% wage subsidy, as long as you can prove some decline in business performance. It was originally revenue. It's been altered to allow for other things other than revenue, because revenue is not always the only indicator of how a business is going. So those things are all going to be very helpful. You can also apply for a bank loan through your institutional banks or credit agency. I'm losing my train of thought here. Credit unions. Thank you. There it is. It's a $40,000 loan to help you pay your rent, et cetera. It's interest free. And if you pay the whole $40,000 back by December of 2022, which is December of 2021, which is a long way off, $10,000 of the loan is forgiven. I have heard challenges for businesses applying for that loan, and we're passing this on to the government. And I think the government's going to continually have to tweak some of these programs. I just want to say the big thing going on right now that I'm hearing is people who are still, they've lost a lot of their jobs, but maybe they have one part-time job left and they're working about 10 or 12 hours a week. They don't qualify for CERB. And this is a huge mistake by the government, and they need to fix it.
That was actually where I was going the next, to look at something, like there's so many different facets of businesses and so many that don't fit into the qualifications. Like someone like me who owns my own business, who I'm an event planner and I do marketing. So the event planning side of my business has completely come to a halt, and we've rescheduled umpteen weddings and events for this year happening next year. But at the same time, on the marketing side of things, I am still making some money, but I'm also didn't get to run my wedding show that's supposed to happen in September and that sort of thing. So there's a significant loss there, but I'm still considered employed. I guess I'm bringing in money for the marketing side of my business. So there's that. I think I can't be the only one.
No, you're not. And there's other people, and I'm hearing from other, dentists and massage therapists and chiropractors and others. They often pay themselves in a different type, not necessarily salary. They pay themselves through dividends and the way they structure corporations. And they're finding that even when they apply for that $40,000 loan, they're being deemed ineligible because they don't meet the payroll requirements, because they're paying themselves in dividends or other things. So again, I think that there's lots of issues with all these support packages that are being raised by myself, by other, conservative members of parliament. And certainly the CFIB has been raising these issues with the government continuously. I really hope the government is going to start acting faster on these things. They have said they're going to bring in an exemption for people to work up to 10 hours a week and still get CERB. They haven't done it. They said it almost a week ago. And these little delays might not seem like much to a big government, but for a person who is trying to survive on 10 hours a week of employment, it's a big deal. And my heart goes out to these people when I get these emails. I wish I had better answers. The government really has to move faster on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is fluid and everything is changing so quickly. And I think that the initial plans that came out, and the support that the government, both federal, provincial, municipal, we're all trying to make the best of what's happening. But I think no one could have expected exactly what we're going through. So I think that you're right. There needs to be some changes, and maybe a little bit more quickly. But hopefully we'll get to that point as well. What about support for seniors?
Yeah, so I mean, seniors right now, there's a few things that are going on for them. We're reducing the amount that they have to take out of their RRIF by 25%. So normally you have to take out a certain amount every year, but with the real downturn in the markets, they're granting some relief, so you don't have to withdraw 100% this year. I'd like it to be higher. They are also going to be entitled to the refund with respect to HST that should be coming. There's really not much more that's being offered for seniors. And I think the rationale is that seniors are retired and therefore they haven't lost income as a result of COVID-19, unlike people who are in the workforce. There is some money that's being funneled through the United Way to help seniors with things like picking up groceries and practical services that they need. Again, I don't have a lot of the details on that, and I actually don't know how active the United Way is in Dufferin-Caledon. I'd like to find out what they're going to do to help seniors. I think there should be more. I don't think anyone should have to withdraw from a RIF right now when the market's down a significant amount of money, and that's money that seniors need for the rest of their lives.
I think you mentioned this briefly, but I believe there's a relief for students as well, people with loans, student loans.
So yeah, they are adding some interest, a 6-month interest-free moratorium on the repayment of student loans, which I think is great for students. Students are also falling through the gaps right now. Other than offering interest-free on their student loans, and a pause, I think there's a pause on replacement. Yeah, there's a moratorium on the repayment of Canada student loans as well as an interest pause. That doesn't help people who were, hoping to get a summer job to help pay for tuition and other things, because all of those things are being adversely affected. So I'd like to see more done there. We have been told, I got an email yesterday on this Canada Summer Student Jobs Program is going to be expanded significantly this year. And in fact, in the riding of Dufferin-Caledon, we're going to be able to have 25 more employers hire summer students. So that's a big increase because we already get a good number of employers that do it. So if there's any employers out there, they should get in touch with me and let me know that they would like to hire a summer student, and we can give them the details on the program and how they can apply.
Oh, that's phenomenal. So we've got just less than a minute left. So I just wanted to ask you, as I've been asking all of my guests, what you've been doing to pass the time when you're not doing so many different things for us in Parliament.
Well, you know what? I've taken up running, which I've never done before, and that's an interesting experience. So I road cycle in my free time. The weather hasn't been great for that, but I have been riding a lot and getting out and running. So for me, I'm getting a little bit more time to exercise, which I think is great. And I think it's an opportunity for a lot of people to maybe get a little more exercise during this time.
Wonderful. Mr. Seeback, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're extremely busy to speak with us today. If hopefully you'll come back and give us an update in a week or two and let us know.
Happy to do that. Yeah, let me know.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for joining us. Everybody out there, you stay safe and healthy. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to this COVID-19 update for Rogers. My name is Teena Avery. I'm very pleased to introduce you to my first guest, Gord Purdy from iPro Realty. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Looking forward to this.
Yes, I figured this would be a good topic because there's so many things that are happening right now. And I just thought we should talk about what the real estate market's doing. So how has COVID-19 affected the spring market?
I wish I could be more positive. There's no market. It's just so completely slow out there right now. so many variables you can possibly imagine. Where do you start? I mean, it's people who are afraid of not selling as high as what they normally were in the winter time, or people who maybe have lost a job, or a little bit nervous about what's going to happen health-wise. All those variables, it's really made a market kind of slow, like almost non-existent.
I have seen some houses up for sale. So some people are still looking to buy and sell, or possibly their houses went up for sale before all this happened.
Yeah, it's funny how you should see some houses still up for sale, and I think that, well, there's so many answers you can go with. The biggest thing is that they don't really know what's going to happen, so they keep it on the market. You can still see a house if you want to through some very stringent, activities through real estate. And I guess the hopes are that, they'll still get what they're asking for that house. And maybe there is that one buyer out there that will, buy their home, but you're restricting yourself so much by keeping the house on the market. So people still want to sell. Obviously, they're selling before the COVID and oil prices, of course, and so that's why they maintain that. There's a lot of suspensions, though. It's almost like you won't see a reduction in pricing in housing, so much so you just see a lot of people just suspend a listing and wait it out. There are buyers still out there, but they're very, very few and far between. There's a balance where a lot of people who are selling a home don't want to have anybody in their house. They don't want, and the buyers don't want to go into a house. So there's so many different, again, variables. I use that word a lot because there's so many restrictions involved that people are just kind of staying status quo to see what the market's actually going to do, or they'll just suspend that listing itself. But there is that one-off that maybe someone does have to sell for a transfer of job, whatever it might be. But there's really not a lot of activity at all whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think it is too. I mean, people are just waiting to see what's happening. As you said, I mean, everything is very fluid and changing on a regular basis. But I was wondering, is there like an influx of people that are maybe panicking over the financial side of things and looking to sell their house? Like, is that something that we foresee in the future?
Yeah, I mean, to assume that it's easy to assume that, and you have all the formula to think that that's what's going to happen, because you have to understand, and we all understand, that we just don't know what's going to happen in the market, the short-term market. So there are people out there that may have to sell. I think there's 50 listings right now in the Dufferin County area. Then some have sold conditional, but that's staying status quo. Do they have to sell per se? We don't really know that, but it's almost like people think that, and that creates a problem too, because then they think that they have to sell, they'll go in low, and that odd buyer will go in and try and create that situation. So yeah, there are going to be people out there that want to have that debt load paid off. And it's funny that I've seen a couple of new listings that come up that are of high nature, like anything above $800,000 and $850,000, let's say 1.4 million or something like that. Those are the ones that I would assume that, okay, they have to sell. They've overextended themselves in a way. But the ones that are below 600, there's not a lot of new listings happening. And that activity is going on. There's so much adjustments going on inside its heads or pricing wise. Yeah.
Right. So what type of changes have you had to make to be able to still operate in this time?
Well, the changes that I've made, really with the real estate, all of us have to adjust by doing everything by email, everything by Skype or Zoom. Everything is electronic when it comes to the contracts, the signings, but to actually show a house, even though it is limited, we do have strict, laws, the rules by the real estate council that we have to wear gloves, we have to wear the mask. If we're actually taking a client through a house, what adjustments I have to make is I have to take one person through the house, and no children are allowed, and that one person has to have a mask. They have to have gloves. We make sure that they don't touch anything in the house. And that's the adjustment that we have to make as real estate agents. And it can be quite difficult and nerve-wracking in a bit, but we do still do that. We still provide that service, and that's the only adjustment that we have, is everything's electronic.
Is it feasible? Is it feasible to think that in the short term things may go to like a virtual tour? Like, I'm not sure how comfortable I would be buying a house over like a virtual tour, but is that feasible? That's where we're going for the short term right now?
Wow, it's if you actually between you and me, and if you actually thought about that, buying a virtual tour house, it's nerve-wracking. I mean, just I can't see it happening. It hasn't happened yet that I know of. But you do the thing about this industry right now with if you're buying a house, that buyer is going to be very qualified for your specific house because they're not because of the COVID. We are going in with a qualified buyer that is going to understand everything about your house through the virtual tour. And then that one time that we do take them through, that reassures them that, yeah, this is the house. And then again, they're going to have to do a house inspection. So it's not really that they're going to buy a house through a virtual tour. They're actually going to know a lot more about a house through virtual tour. And the virtual tours that anybody does put out there is going to be very, very more detailed, I guess you'd say, because you are basically want to show them everything. So to buy it, no, but there's going to be that one time they're going to go through the house and qualify that that's the house they want. So as a seller, you're going to know that that buyer is going to be qualified better off than before, because a lot of times you open houses, which we're not allowed to do. You're not going to get 40 people, 30 people through. You're going to get that one buyer that's qualified and wants your house. Yeah.
So we're seeing the interest rates dropping right now. Is this meant to aid in the survival of the real estate market? It's
meant to do that. So we're 100 basis points, I think, or 125 basis points in, I believe it was 2 days or something like that. So that whole idea through the bank introducing to that point of like unsurpassed low rates is to help the market, obviously. Is it enough to do that? No, it's not to sustain the market, but it is to have something in a near future create that market to come back. But right now, it's not enough to create an onslaught of buyers because of the nervousness of everybody's jobs, et cetera, like we were explaining earlier. It's a great tool, obviously, for sure, when we return back to normal, hopefully sometime soon.
So what tips would you give potential sellers or buyers in this unprecedented time? Is the best tip to hold off if you can?
Well, again, so many answers. So if I'm a buyer, I would think that because of the mortgage rates being so low, and if you waited it out a little bit, then you might see that reduction price 2.8 to 3% less than the actual market value. So it's a good time as a buyer, if I was to recommend a buyer, if you're qualified, of course. And really, you can't see a house now because you have to be qualified anyway. So it's a good time for buyers to do so. But wait a bit, just to see what happens with the market. As a seller, again, I emphasize you getting a qualified buyer who is basically knows everything about your house, and they're not tire kicking and going other places. It's your house that they want. So as a seller perspective, it's kind of good too. And then, you know, the other thing is that should you keep the house in the market as well? Do you really need to sell? And if not, then do you really want anybody through your home? It's a very difficult balance to say. So maybe you want to, take it off the market and go maybe 6 months later. But as a buyer, maybe hold off for a month and see what happens, because no one's really reduced their prices. Like I was saying, they've only taken the house off the market. So yeah, it's still a good time to buy, though, still for sure. Yeah, because of the rates.
Yeah, I think it's as you're saying, it's a comfort level as well. I'm not sure I would want anyone coming through my house right now, you can take precautions. There's still that comfort level that I think everybody needs to achieve. So tell me, what have you been doing in your, I guess, off time, as the market's a little bit slower than normal? What have you been doing to keep your sanity and just to be happy, isolated in your own home?
Well, I guess my putting stroke is a lot better, that's for sure. And then I've flipped a few homes in the past, so I do have a backyard. I was going to flip the house I'm in now. My son was recently married, so I made an apartment for them downstairs. And now that they're gone, I still have a backyard that has to be kind of maintained. And I've been doing a lot of work, putting planters in, doing some retaining walls, just, stuff out in the backyard. Thank goodness, in a way that this happened at this time so we can actually go outside and work in the backyard. And thank goodness I have a backyard. But other than that, learning to fold laundry pretty much better than what I used to, and doing some putts around the carpet, And my parents are also, they were in Bob Cage, and I was really concerned about that. They were in actually the home, but I miss them. They're 90 and 86, so I contact them every day, talk to them every day, and stuff like that. So, and also, if I want to go to about real estate, it's good now to actually fix your house inside if you can. Paint or do whatever you can do to fix those things that you probably were too busy doing while you're having the work, or not laid off in the way we are now. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's many projects that I have in the back of my head that I never get to because I'm always on the go and always busy. So it is a good time if you can do that. But believe it or not, I think I'm actually a little bit busier than I was before all this started.
Well, I believe that because you have to, now it's difficult for you to get a hold of people. So, but yeah, we appreciate what you do for sure.
Well, thank you. So just a quick question with regards to home renos and that sort of thing. I mean, they still can be done. We're just, you can order your supplies from local stores and support, and they either deliver or you have a curbside pickup. But as you're saying, this is the time to do it. But people shouldn't be taking on things that maybe they don't know how to do very well.
That's very much so. Yeah, you have to be comfortable what you're going to do. But you know what? Again, the computer's a great tool. YouTube is a great tool. Keep it simple. Yeah, for sure. You don't want to go on the roof right now and take some tiles off or something like that, or work some plumbing and then have a bit of a disaster. No, it's just the aesthetics wise, or painting, or maybe put some flooring down, simple stuff like that. I mean, the backyard kind of stuff is easy. It's not really carpentry work per se, because you've got, it's kind of easy work. You can use your mind to figure out what you're going to do. But the intricate stuff, stay away from.
Well, I think
a good idea.
So, Gord, thank you so much for joining me today. We really appreciate all the information. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back on the show when everything's back in place, and we can talk about how great the market's doing.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to that. Thank you, Teena. Thank you.
Welcome to this COVID-19 update for Rogers. My name is Teena Avery. I am with a beautiful lady that you may have seen on Dufferin Life visit me before, Kim Van Ryan, who's the Executive Director of Branching Out Support Services. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Teena. I appreciate it.
Well, let's talk about, let's talk about the actual services. Let's make everybody aware of what Branching Out Support Services is. And then maybe we'll talk about how COVID-19 has affected how it's run.
Sure. So Branching Out Support Services is a program that's running support services in Orangeville. Our main thing that we're doing on First Street right downtown is day program for adults with developmental disabilities, which is on hold right now because of COVID-19. But some of the other activities that we participate in is family support and respite for individuals in our community of all ages who have developmental disabilities and differences. We also do things like run therapeutic groups to teach social skills, life skills, lots of recreation, day trips, that kind of thing. So our main population is people and families who have someone in with a diagnosed disability or difference, but we're really open to serving everyone in the community, and that's what we've been trying to do throughout this time as well.
Well, I think it's really important that we don't forget about all of these support services that everybody has to offer, because they're not happening either. So let's talk about how you've been able to change the communication levels and how you've been able to still operate and still provide services for those people.
Yeah, so we've had to make some really big changes because our basis is community. It's about being present and active in our community. So in our day program, we do a lot of volunteering. We have a lot of engagement with our community partners. So because we've had to shut all of that down to stay safe, we've had to really modify how we're working with people. So we do still have one-to-one services available for people who need in-home support, but we've moved a lot of our services, as much as we can anyways, online in an attempt to continue to connect with people. So one of the things that our day program is doing is having Zoom parties. That's what we call them, Zoom parties, twice a week, and they're scheduled so that our participants really have something to count on and look forward to, as if that, because normally they would have their scheduled days that they come to day program. So we're doing that. And then we invite our community partners to come on to those Zoom parties to engage in different activities. So we have dances, we have people who come on and sing with us. We have our Zumba instructor coming on who's going to teach us a Zumba class. We've also started a letter writing program, so a pen pal program, so that people are able to even draw pictures, send photographs of themselves to their friends within the program, which is something that we've never done before. And we also created a whole bunch of activity bags with some supplies that we had at the day program, but we also got some donated supplies as well, so that we could send some things from day program into people's homes as transitional objects, so that they still had access to good resources. A lot of those activity bags went to the Dufferin Food Chair as well, to go to families that needed extra resources, maybe didn't have the funds to do that right now. So there's been a lot of community engagement going on, a surprising amount, I think, considering the fact that we can't actually be together.
Right. And I think that many families with members that have differing levels of abilities, the majority of these people really rely on routine. Yes. And their therapy as well. So now that COVID-19, this pandemic, has taken away these essential routines, what tips might you have to help them deal with these types of changes? Because that's a big change for all of us. Yeah. And people who truly rely on routine.
Yeah. And I think that, we've talked to a lot of parents who are in a lot of different situations at home, depending on their person's diagnosis and what that means for them. But I've also talked to a lot of parents who are homeschooling their neurotypical children as well. And I think the rule of thumb that I've really been encouraging people is that mental health comes first. So try to have a routine as much as you can. A lot of parents have visual schedules for their people so that they can see on a schedule pictures or words, whatever works best for them, sometimes on their tablet, exactly what's going to happen during the day. We're going to wake up, we're going to watch a show, we're going to have breakfast, like it's broken down. But these things can go off the rails very easily, depending on where people are at with their mental health. So that comes first. Try and do your schedules, but if it falls apart, it's okay. Right? Like, I think we also need to be easy on ourselves and easy on our kids, our people, even our adult children, right? A lot of people involved with branching out still live with their moms and dads, their caregivers, but they're adult children, they're over 21. And so we need to be easy on ourselves and know that this isn't typical. Mental health is absolutely number one. Whatever needs to be done to reduce anxiety, make people feel safe, engage, have fun, that comes first.
So what types of resources are available for people with differing abilities? What's available to them right now during this pandemic?
So there's some formal resources available and there's some informal resources available. So as far as mental health concerned, formal resources definitely are Dufferin-Child and Family Services. And we can post some of this information, right, Teena, for people who need to know. But you can call the main line at Dufferin-Child and Family Services or the main line at Family Transition Place for some formal mental health counseling, parenting support, that kind of thing. And they will also have access to other resources such as food, housing, any of those things that families are going to need right now. So yeah, DCAFS and Family Transition Place. Also, Canadian Mental Health Association, Peel, Dufferin Peel is providing a lot of those things. And for informal resources, I think there's some small businesses in Orangeville that are just doing an amazing job at producing content for people that's really accessible and it's free. So what we're trying to do at Branching Out is collect as much of that information as we can on our Facebook page. So sometimes it does take some scrolling to find exactly what it is that you want. But we have a bunch of community partners who are pre-recording or doing lives on Facebook of fitness classes, dance classes, karate classes, art lessons, and they're all on the Branching Out Support Services Facebook page, which is at Branching Out Supports. We're also posting, we also had some really amazing local musicians do songs and post them on there too, which are always fun. And then we're just trying to find as many interesting resources from Cirque du Soleil videos to banana bread recipes to coloring pages to Lego challenges, like anything that we can find, because we know people have such diverse interests and not everyone's going to be into Lego and not everyone's going to be into making banana bread, right? So we're just trying to find as much as we possibly can that's joyful and positive and uplifting. We're having photo contests. We're doing joke of the day. We're just trying to put as many things together as possible in hopes that there'll be something there that works for you or your family or is just interesting to look at, that's not negative news. There's been some research already done about how much time we're spending talking about some of the more scary, anxiety-provoking things. So we're just adding a flip side to that in that we don't talk about or post a lot of really formal information about the virus on our page because our participants have access to the Facebook page. They can go on there and engage in any way that they want. And we're trying to keep it quite fun and positive and lifting people's spirits.
And I think that's really important and vital right now. We do need to get information. We do need to get as much, to get up-to-date news and reliable news. And I've always stressed watching, whether it's watching Rogers, whether it's watching, the news on the TV, whatever you happen to be watching at the time, listening to the radio, listening to interviews, always make sure you're getting your news from reliable and trustworthy sources, number one, because that alone can create so much stress if you're just looking and reading everything off of Facebook and Twitter and all these different conspiracy theories and all these things. And I think it's really important to stay positive and to reach out to people. Absolutely, for sure. So let's talk about what you've been doing when you're not online, creating all of these wonderful things for everybody. What have you been doing to keep busy and stay sane in this crazy time that we're in?
Yeah, so getting outside is huge for me. Just because I do so much work consulting and creating online content sitting at my desk. So getting outside has been a really big one for me. I did take a couple days off over the weekend. So I think that's important to remembering that it's okay to walk away from our jobs that a lot of us are doing from home right now. And the environment is very different. So being able to take scheduled breaks and go do something that I want to do. And I love walking my dog. So that's one of the things that I try to engage in daily. I'm still teaching yoga, which is huge for me. So the yoga studio that I work for is still doing live streams. So even though I do teach alone in the studio, which is a bit bizarre, it took me a while to get into that, but I'm still doing that because for me, like just doing my practice and also doing a give back to the community is really important for me. And I'm still doing a bit of a volunteering, which also is it's really important for me. I know it is a bit of a risk and we need to be really, really careful about being safe. But I'm volunteering at the Dufferin Food Share still. So I'm doing all of those things and they're really enriching for me to be able to do those things. So that's been helpful.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we don't realize is maybe, and maybe you can kind of shed some light on how we might be able to explain. There's just certain people that may not understand exactly what's going on. They don't understand why they have to stay in. And that is a whole anxiety level unto itself. How are you recommending for families to deal with people who are just have individuals in their home that don't understand what's happening and why they can't do what they normally have to do?
Yeah, and this is a really big concern that some of our families have experienced partly because we know that people on the autism spectrum or who have different disabilities, brain abnormalities, process things differently than I do. So there's a really good tool that we've been using. It's called a social story. I don't have an example of one here with me, but you could Google social stories and see some really good examples of them. So generally what they are, they're individualized, and I've made quite a few of them. So if people have specific questions about this, they can drop me an email. So we make probably, depending on the person, in between 8 and 10 pages with pictures and very clear statements about the situation that's happening. And this can be used for any situation, not just a worldwide virus. We do this for when people transition from school to day program. We make them a social story that tells them exactly what's happening and exactly what to expect. So in this situation, when we've done that, again, we haven't focused on the really negative parts. We are clear that there is a virus and that to stay safe, we stay inside. And then we've been able to explain that also your friends are staying inside and your staff are staying inside and nobody's going to school, so that they know they're not the only one that this is happening to. So we can really kind of generalize it. And then we give really positive ideas about what they can do. So we say, you can do Lego, you can make art, you can go for a walk with your mom and the dog. So we're able to explain what's happening. And instead of focusing on you can't, we then give really positive options about what you can do. So that's one of the real, and you can use that tool. Like I could write a social story for someone, email it, and it requires no contact at all. And they could literally look at it on their phone or their tablet. Like you don't even need to print it. So that's one that's really, really good for people who have processing differences and that we've used quite a bit successfully.
That's an amazing example and a great suggestion. Thank you very much, which would work well with younger children too, that are not understanding exactly what's going on and what the severity of what we're going through is right now. Kim, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this wonderful information with us today, and taking the time to do so, because I know you're a very busy lady.
Thanks. Thanks for having me on, Teena.
Welcome to this COVID-19 update. I hope this finds you healthy and safe. My name is Teena Avery, and I'd like to introduce you to my next guest, Maureen, Tegart, the Mental Health Lead and Program Coordinator for Dufferin Area Family Health Unit, Health Team. Thank you so much, Maureen, for joining me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Teena.
I think it's really important. We're experiencing something as a community that we've never experienced before, and hopefully we'll never have to go through again. But I really wanted to talk about everybody's mental health, and not necessarily people who are already suffering with different afflictions. It's more the people that this is a whole new world. For normal life has kind of been completely rearranged for everybody. And I'm just wondering the best way to, or what the best way for people to start dealing with those feelings are, because we've been in isolation now coming on to 4 weeks. And it's a lot for people to deal with. So what can people do to? Yeah.
Well, Teena, you put it really well. I mean, these are very challenging and untraveled times for most of us. We are living within conditions that we would not even have imagined a couple of months ago. And yet here we are, and we're making it work. But certainly, I think it would be very fair to say that across our community, across our province, across our country, the whole world, that, most people are living with a degree of anxiety because we are reminded in very clear ways that life is uncertain. And so in this awareness, we're finding our feet within it. And so I think there's going to be, and that perhaps this is the optimistic part of me, believing that, there's already, despite the challenges, despite the sadness, despite the isolation that can be there in any of our lives, there's also things that we're learning and things that are going to come out of this in terms of new ways of being in the world with each other. So let's see. But we
Absolutely.
first have to survive. And we are.
We will. As I've said many times, we will get to the other side of this. And the goal always is to get to the other side of it with as little loss as possible, both with human lives and loss to business and homes and financial stress and that sort of thing. So what are some good ways for people to deal with stress on a daily basis?
Yeah, the way that I look at it is it's stress, but it's also loss in many ways where we are engaged in a kind of a collective grief, a grief around the life that we had known and the ways in which the freedoms that we had to move about in our world, in our community, to go grocery shopping and not stand in a line with physical distancing. We're still like we're in the midst of grief around that. And I think when we're grieving, the most important thing that we can give to ourselves and to others is compassion, to really, just really feel it and make room for that vulnerability that we are experiencing. And yet at the same time, as we feel the grief, as we feel the sadness, as we feel the uncertainty, to find the ways in which we can keep going. It sounds simple, but even just the acknowledging of what we're feeling allows us to move on. I like to say, if we can name it, we can face it. And so whether we want to kind of look at it through a lens of grief or just the lens of uncertainty that anxiety creates, one of the things that we know for sure is that we're in this together, everyone. And so while there may be some of us who've struggled, throughout or at points in our life with anxiety or an anxiety disorder, nobody's alone in this. We're feeling it in different and unique individual ways. And we can keep going. We are keeping going. And I think in the process, as we can, maybe in concrete ways, offer ourselves compassion and compassion to others, there's some gifts in the middle of it all. I think, Teena, of, some of the stories that I hear and even what I experience in my own life around a renewed attention to elderly relatives in my family, in my life, and the ways in which people are reaching out to individuals who are on their own. In fact, I've heard, and my team has heard from a number of seniors who, despite the lockdown, are actually in more contact with their families than they were before this.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a unique situation. And I think one of the things that are really important is we're all suffering from different levels of stress and anxiety with everything that's going on. And I think you kind of hit it the nail on the head when you mentioned it's the compassion and the support that we give to our loved ones and our friends, and maybe new friends that we may have met, the neighbor over the fence that we didn't know before, but giving that that everybody is feeling this, and we're all feeling it in a different way. For some people, the stress is very financial. Some people, it's the worry about somebody in their family becoming sick. There's so many different ways that this can hit, and going into that, we're hit with so many different types of information levels, whether it's the social media, the news, if you happen to be listening to the radio, these interviews, like, you're always hit with a lot of information. And what I find is some people will dwell on the worst case scenarios. What advice can you give us on how do we deal with the people that are constantly doing the what ifs and going to the worst case scenario? Because that just amplifies the anxiety and stress to the person that they're speaking to.
Yeah, and sometimes we can see what the loved one in our lives is maybe not so able to see about that, the power of a thought that is a worst case scenario thought, the power of that to hijack, our other thoughts, our lives, our well-being. And so I guess the most important thing I would say is to bring compassion and patience to that, while providing some encouragement to try to hold some balance, not in a lecturing way, but if, for instance, the worst case scenario is a thought about losing somebody to COVID, who is pretty precious in a family's life, really bringing to bear, some of the balance of that as we get information from reliable sources without bombarding ourselves with media, social media, news feed all day long, we can track what is real and true and reliable in our own communities, and what is true and reliable in our own day, in our own moment. So lots of times, anxiety operates off of an unknown sense of the future. That's what feeds it. That's its fuel. And so one of the things that we can do to really push back against that is to bring things back to a sense of the present. And I like to, talk about anchoring oneself in the present. So remembering to breathe, remembering and paying attention to oneself within this day, this moment. Folks who have a bit of a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice, have developed lots of skills around getting back to the here and now. But each one of us can do it. In lots of ways, it's about kind of getting activated in our bodies. Whether that's going for a walk, in our minds by bringing and balancing thoughts. So if the thought goes to that worst case scenario, balancing it out with a thought about a best case scenario. So what are some of the good things? What are some of the hopeful things that are going to come out of this for yourself, for your family, for your future, and maybe even for, our country and the world? And that balance, kind of helps to remind us that it's not all. Yes, there is uncertainty, and yes, there is loss, and yes, there are things that we're facing as a country and a world that we haven't faced in a long time, but there's also a lot of good that's coming out of it, and we can hold both. It's not either or. The other thing I would say is that lots of times when we're in that place of feeling urgency and anxiety, we forget that a feeling is just a feeling. It's not a fact. There are facts attached to it, but usually when we're feeling that fear about the what if and the what might happen, it's not yet factual in our lives. That if we stop and pay attention to what's around us, we can see we are actually okay. We may have some limits in what we can do today as we practice social distancing and we stay home and, we cancel that trip that we had planned to go somewhere. But we're okay. We have food, we have shelter, and we have people in our lives who we can connect with, if not physically, virtually. And we can learn some of those strategies for how to, maybe maintain more consistent connection with the people that we really love.
Absolutely. And I mean, we are very lucky. We are very fortunate to live in a country where we enjoy freedoms. And as this has progressed, we completely understand why some of these, freedoms and these options have been taken away from us, because it's necessary for us to make it through, that we have these types of restrictions. So we've talked about loss, we've talked about stress and anxiety, but one of the things people may be feeling too is a lack of control, because we don't have control over what we can do. So we've got a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to say, how can we deal with this feeling of lack of control, because that can drive people to the edge as well.
Well said. And as human beings, we do like to have control in our own lives, for sure. I think, here's the paradox. If we can accept that we don't have control, we can actually take back control. We can take back control over the things that we do have something we can do about. So we can wash our hands. We can keep a safe distance. We can stay in contact with others. We can accept that as we push past the denial that this is happening, some of the anger, sadness, bargaining around it, and we get to this and we move through grief to this place of accepting that this is really happening, and that there are some things we can't do anything about. We can't automatically evaporate the virus, but we can do the things that we are doing as individuals, as a community, and as a province and a country. And that's where we have some control. And then in the midst of that, we can do things to take care of ourselves and our families. We can pay attention to sleep and nutrition, and we can go for that walk, and we can get out in the sunshine in our own yards, and we can reach out to a neighbor who maybe needs something from the grocery store, so that when we do our run, we pick something else up. There's lots of things we can do. In fact, some of the folks that our team has talked to this even in the last couple of weeks, have found that they are doing things that they just, had been put on hold. They, baking bread, or taking up an activity that used to provide pleasure, but just got, lost in the busyness of life. And now it's there again. So we can take back some control in our own lives, our self-care, and our home environments. That's what we can do.
Thank you, Maureen. Everybody out there, please stay safe and healthy. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.